welcome all of you and thank you for being here. I am Gil Cedillo. This is the Housing Committee for Wednesday, June 24th, 2015. I'm joined by Senator Price, City Council Member for CD 9. Mr. Fuentes is not with us as of yet. We have an item that will be held until the end of the meeting. Item 1 will be held till the end of the meeting or until Mr. Fuentes gets here. And we are going to begin with item number 2, the Family Source Centers. Please note that we are taking a report and sending out an RFP. It's our intention and our goal that we will be able to fund all the Family Source Centers. We obviously have great consternation when it looks like we're having cuts, but that, as you may know of me, is just the beginning of the conversation. And some people say I'm stubborn. I refuse to accept that. So we will continue to see if we can make sure that at a minimum we fund all the very responsive and capable providers who have done a great job for us. And so I want everybody to know that that's our disposition from here. And so we are going to begin. Mr. Senator, if you're ready to go.
I'm ready.
We will begin.
Mr. Chair, item 2 is a Housing Department report relative to authorizing the release of the Family Source Center RFP.
Great. Okay. Identify yourself for the record.
Olivia Mitchell with the Housing and Community Investment Department, and I manage the Family Source Center system.
I'm Helen Campbell with the Housing Community Investment Department.
Okay.
As we move to issue this new RFP, we intend to take advantage of all that we've learned in the 6 or 7 years since we put this system together. The purpose of the system originally was to make certain that no matter where low-income families went in the city of Los Angeles, they could count on receiving a core group of services. Fortunately for us, from the beginning, we've had an evaluation system in place. We have challenged our organizations to provide the best possible service, and we have evaluated them each year. Last year, we put together an economic impact. What does it mean, the work that we have done? So in order to evaluate them across the board, we developed 2 outcomes. One of the outcomes was academic achievement for the family. The second outcome was increased income. In the area of increased income, we have had a glowing success, principally through our use of the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. We have generated over $16 million for low-income families through their own work and refunds, as well as the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit. The IRS just loves us. They think we're wonderful. They gave us a certificate, and they like us.
Okay.
The second area where we were having less success across the system.
Before you continue, the states now move towards a state earned income tax credit.
Yes, we saw that.
We have the federal. Share with us some of the ideas. Tell us about that and the prospects for us in terms of helping these families.
Well, the state earned income tax will be, of course, less money for individuals, but we are ready to take it on. Our families do a variety of things with the refunds that we get for them. Most of them are surprised at the amount of money that they get. Some come in, and then with their refunds, we have a number of stories, but we have the homeless woman who was in LVN nursing school. Brother she was living with died, and she was homeless, but her tax refund allowed her to get an apartment and to pay for a license. We have the woman who was able to use her refund to license her home so she could have family daycare and get all of the information that she needed, that she had to pay for. We even have stories of the homeless young man who worked a part-time job and thought he would come in and get $75 in refund. We were able to get him $220 so he could pay for his cap and gown for his graduation. I mean, so we have stories from there to a family who we did 2 things for. We helped them solidify their legal status, as well as get them income, and they ended up with a family refund of $23,000. We don't talk a lot about it because with the
23,000?
$23,000. If you go back and you have a family, you can do that. They actually went on vacation to visit their relatives in Mexico. So there are a variety of things that people do with their refunds, but we've been very happy. We've included people who recently were granting guardianship of their niece and nephew, weren't aware that they therefore were eligible for EITC to help them. And the additional money that comes from the state will add to that sum. What we want to do, however, as we move forward in our new RFP, is that it's one thing to get the money for the family. It's something else to begin to build assets. So that's what we want to do in the future. We want to say, what are you doing with your money? We have been able, over the last 5 or 6 years, to get more and more people to do direct deposit. So we save them on the cost of their tax preparation, and then we save them on cashing those refund checks. Now we want to move them forward. What are we doing? Are they opening 529 accounts for college education? How are they using the money to start a business, which you can do, a small business? That's the woman who is doing a home child care program. So that's where our focus is going to be next. We've added income through our transportation program so that they can go free. We get child care that reduces money, the costs for them. We get CalFresh. So our economic impact report speaks to the fact that all the money that we save people is really spent in their local neighborhoods, and then those local businesses use it to improve their business. So we see for the money that we put in our family source system that we take to the community, we double the money. So we're looking there. In academics this year, you are aware we have a contract with LAUSD. So they have put pupil service and attendance counselors in most of our centers, and those people who are master's level, MSWs, LCSWs, but they're all at the master's level, have come into our centers and are providing psychosocial evaluation, not just for the young people who are in the program, but the whole family. They can track the whole family. So if one child is having issues, they can track where did the mother go in school, where's the little brother going in school, and then we can work on the family. And they've helped us with parent education that's focused on academics. We historically have done a lot of it on behavior. So this is focused on academic. This year we asked them to do, our agencies are required to serve 180 young people. This year we've asked them to look at 225. This first year they've seen over 300 young people at our sites. More than that, as a part of our agreement, the school district has a diversion program, so young people who are involved in minor scrapes, fighting, less than so much marijuana, etc., they're diverted to our centers. And they have brought in almost 500 young people who are not a part of our system, but they're seen at diversion, and they have a foster student program that's also housed at some of our family source centers. So we've seen beyond the young people that we want to see another 50, 75, 100 young people, and that's part of what we're going to be talking to the school district and the county about, because we have a limitation, a geographic limitation. In some of our areas on the southeast, the kids come from Bell and Southgate and whether when they come to our site, technically we're not supposed to give them a range of service, but the PSAs can see them on site. So that's been a terrific advantage to us, and we're going to continue that program. We match it dollar for dollar at this point, and it's about $1 million annually for that program. So when we look at that program, when we look at our progress over time, our success with our families, we're trying to make some improvements of the program. So I heard your statement about keeping them all intact.
Right.
Our recommendation is they're currently funded at $700,000, and let me back that up. When we created this system, each of these family source centers received $1 million to provide the services that we need universally, as well as intensive counseling. 2 years ago, you realize we had this CBDO issue, and rather than break up the system, we lowered the money. So they're now at 700,000. And we find that at 700,000, what we need in terms of the level of experience of the staff to provide the services that we want, we need to be able to pay people, we need to have more people as case managers and et cetera, and we need to pay them the wage that they deserve for providing the service. So we've looked at the agencies that we fund, the most successful agencies that we fund. We've used them as a benchmark. We've looked at best practices, and we think that we need $800,000 a center to provide the level of services that we would like to provide overall. At present, at $800,000 a center, we probably cannot fund all the centers that we have, but to the extent that we don't know how much money we're going to have next year, we can't say what centers we wouldn't have. We have, and the reason why my colleague Helen is here, is we have charted, they've mapped using a variety of documents. They have charted for us in priority order where the families in poverty live. And I think it's important to say that there's some areas that have a lot of children in families, but they're not the poor ones. So they've charted this. Looking at this, when we did this 7 years ago, we had different areas. This has added at least 2 new areas of high poverty and has shifted some of the current areas that we identified left or right or south or north. So Helen can answer all those technical questions for you. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking for permission to release the RFP, to release it with these new sets of indicators. Again, before we said academic, we wanted progress in school. This time we're saying we want specific services provided. We want the young people to do the A through G. Of course, we have the PSAs to help us, but we want them to do A through G. We want middle school kids to be in algebra. We're being very prescriptive in terms of how services are to be provided. So that we can create the kind of impact. Before we talked about outcomes, okay, you advanced, you got more money. Now we're talking about impact. What does that mean? There's one other area that we've made an adjustment. People could carry over a family for a year. Now we're saying that they can carry over some of these families for up to 5 years. Because you can understand that we can't move people from poverty, out of poverty, in a year or in 2 years. So it wouldn't be everyone, it couldn't be everyone, but a cohort with specific goals. We're going to move you here, we're going to move you here, we're going to move you here, and we can keep you up to 5 years. And hopefully we can break the cycle of the intergenerational poverty by moving parents in their education, by moving the older children into a pathway towards education and post-secondary education, and helping them get better jobs, high school education. Our evaluators say not a GED, it has no value at all. They need to just go ahead and get a high school degree, even if they're getting it at 30. It counts. So we're using those evaluations to direct us. We're also, from the beginning, have been a part of the Malcolm Baldrige whatever it's called. We had to go all those classes. But, and our agencies have always been required to apply for a prospector award so that we have quality in the staffing. We meet with the staff once a month so we can provide training. We monitor their behavior. Our financial services are monitored. So we're looking for quality staff. We're looking for quality programs, and we're able to document that in a way that most of the programs across the United States are not.
Questions?
No questions. I just want to thank you for the work you're doing. These family source centers really are a safety net, and I'm excited to see that they were attempting to redeploy the resources in a way that more effectively reaches the areas of need and those families of need. And so I'm excited about the reengineering that's going on, the tweaking. I think that's part of continuous improvement. We have to keep looking at making it better, providing resources, and I think this is a great start to make that happen, Mr. Chairman. I prepared to support it whenever you think it's appropriate. Thank you.
Mr. Fuentes? No? Okay. Public comment? Yes, anybody else? Right, Mr. Bloomfield is an office representative here. Ah, here he is. Welcome.
I am here on behalf of Councilmember Bob Blumenfield. He's extremely concerned with the potential loss of the Canoga Park Family Source Center and urges you to maintain the funding for all 16 centers, including Canoga Park. While many of the other centers in the city are in close proximity to other target areas, the Canoga Park Family Source Center is the only one on the West Valley. The loss of the center would be an extreme hardship for the hardworking families in the West Valley. If the Canoga Park Family Source Center closes its doors, the next closest center is 10 miles away, and for low-income families with limited transportation options, it may not be feasible to make the trip. Canoga Park residents need services. One of the goals of the Family Source Center is to increase graduation rates. 35% of Canoga Park residents have less than a high school degree, which greatly diminishes earning potential. This correlates with 52% of households having less than $40,000 in income. Now is the time to start looking for creative ideas on how to maintain the current level of family source system services and maintain all centers open. Thank you.
Thank you. And please convey the disposition that we stated earlier with respect to our goal is to keep them all open.
Thank you.
To figure that out. Thank you. Okay. Public comment? Veronica Olmos, Lucrecia Barbara Gomez, and Leticia Anderesa.
Good afternoon. My name is Veronica Olmos, and I'm the Executive Director of Central City Neighborhood Partners, and we are the nonprofit operator for the Westlake Pico Union Family Source Center. And I am here today representing the Coalition of Family Source Centers, the 16 nonprofit managed operators. We've had a chance to also look at this transmittal, and like the city, the Family Source Coalition is committed to better serving our families, and we also recognize with the diminishing resources, expanded partnerships are required to create economic opportunities for children and families we serve. Therefore, the FSC Coalition is requesting that before this committee and council approve the release of the RFP, that consideration be given to a couple of items. One, it's a little bit unclear on the $200,000 leverage resource. It doesn't say if it's a hard cash match or an in-kind. We ask that it be considered an either-or. And then also recognizing that each family source center is unique, that we also have the flexibility to decide where the investment and resources will be made. With the new proposed menu, while we are all very supportive of the menu of services, some of the services in the existing model are no longer part of the delivery design. We want them to still be included so that it gives FSC centers the option to select where those resources will best meet their constituents' needs. And then also looking at the requirement for the half-mile radius of the FSC. In some of the areas that are resource poor, a half-mile is a little bit of a challenge for families. If you look at the service area map, they're larger than a half-mile. They're larger than half-mile areas, and so what we would like to see is the flexibility to provide services. We know that there's language in regards to satellite, but does satellite also mean intake and eligibility, or does it mean that we are still able to provide services? So just looking at the RFP, that those items are looked at a little bit clearly. Thank you.
Did you get that?
Hi, my name is Lucrecia Barba Gomez, and I'm here representing New Economics for Women and CCMP. In addition to what Veronica mentioned, another provision that impacts the delivery system is the eligible organizations may not propose to serve both as a FSC operator and subcontractor in another FSC proposal. We are asking to have this provision reconsidered as we currently have successful collaborations that would be impacted and really limit quality and experience of delivery. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. First, I'd like to thank my name is Leticia Andosa. I'm Associate Executive Director of New Economics for Women. We currently manage 2 family source centers, one in Canoga Park and the South Valley area. So first, I'd like to thank you for your opening remarks and willingness to fund all 16 family source centers, and really echo the remarks of Councilmember Blumenfield, that although Canoga Park is showing lower poverty rates, poverty is still an issue that is blocking or that's creating a barrier for low-income families to transition from into financial stability. But in addition, I'd like to stress that our work over the last 5.5 years, together with our partners, we have seen that the family source delivery system creates opportunities for low, moderate income individuals to experience upward economic mobility. So we do appreciate the willingness to fund all 16, and on behalf of the Canoga Park community, we thank you for that consideration, and we hope that that opportunity will be created for all residents of Canoga Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need an action on this? Okay. Just tell me. Just say it. Okay, so can we move to adopt the HC's report, request the CLA to review and approve the RFP before it is released, instruct the CLA to report back on funding options to potentially increase funding levels? Yes?
I'll move.
Okay. Mr. Fuentes? Aye. So be the order?
That brings us to item number 3, which is a Housing Department report and CAO report relative to authorization to execute a subcontract with Impact Assessment, Inc. for the U.S. Centers for Disease Control grant for childhood lead poisoning.
Go back to 1. Okay.
Brett Apershow, CAO.
Sally Richmond, Housing and Community Investment.
This is a request from HID for authorization to sign a subcontract with Impact Assessment for CDC grant funds. The purpose of the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program is to reduce the number of children exposed to lead within the LA Promise Zone and its neighboring communities. The term of the subcontract will be from February 6th, 2015 through September 30th, 2015, with 2 additional 1-year renewal options. The amount payable by Impact Assessment through CDC grant funds to HID will not exceed $25,000. This office concurs with HID's request to sign a subcontract with Impact Assessment. I'm here for any questions.
One question.
Yes, sir.
This program has roughly been around for about 12 years now, correct? Since 2003?
Go ahead. We've been practicing lead-safe work practices in the city since 2003. This is actually a grant from the Centers for Disease Control. It's a little bit different.
Okay, different. But I'm just wondering, are the incidences of lead poisoning going down? I mean, are our efforts paying off over these years, or are we just sort of holding
Nationwide,
on, or are we making any progress?
no, nationwide, the statistics are going down. Blood poisoning seems to be going down. There's still debate in the pediatric community about who should be tested. We believe now that more children are getting health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. But the one reason we chose the Promise Zone is because it's what Linda Kite of the Healthy Homes Collaborative calls a cold zone. Given the poverty levels and the lack of health insurance and the age of housing, there should be higher levels of blood poisoning than are showing up, and we believe because people have not had health care, and many are undocumented and still do not have health care, and that if there was actual testing, more rigorous testing of children in the area, that those scores might go up, and we want to prevent poisoning. So the good news is, yes, with the reduction in gasoline and all of this, there is still lead in all of our houses. Any house built before 1978 has lead paint in it somewhere in the walls, and that's the reality.
Thank you.
Sure.
Public comment, Antonia Ramirez.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You know, we're not a very rich city, and as a matter of fact, we are economically distressed. Now, why are we going to spend so much money on impact assessment? If there is lead poisoning, and if these homes are or have lead poisoning because they were built before 1978, why don't we just bloody demolish them? Why spend all this money on all these investigative works when we already know the answers? Demolish the homes and rebuild. Fumigate the area, pray over it, and just build new homes. Let's bring something up. Let's erect new structures for the 21st century that is clean, wholesome, and that can bring some vibrancy. It's these obviously these buildings are old, or these townhomes or homes or structures are outdated, obsolete, and they are, if they do have lead poisoning, they have it before 1978. So let's demolish them, save money and time, and get people housed. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to adopt the CAO report.
Second?
Second? So be the order.
That brings us to item number 1, which is a Housing Department and CO report regarding the authorization to issue letters of financial commitment for the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee Round 2 Affordable Housing Trust Fund pipeline projects.
Good afternoon, council members. Madeline Rack. Oh,
Can we get... He doesn't have to leave. He just doesn't vote. No. Give it to me. Item 1. There it is. Okay. Item 1. Read this already?
I've already read the item, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, so we can proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. Madeline Rackley with the CAO. I'm joined by
Manuel Bernal, Housing Department. George Guillen, Housing Department.
the request before you is from the Housing and Community Investment Department, HCID, which requests approval to issue letters of commitment for 10 affordable housing projects, which are currently included in the city's managed pipeline. They are applying, 9 of the projects are applying for 9% low-income housing tax credits from the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee, we call that TCAC, in the 2015 Round 2 competition. The application for that is due July 1st. The 10th project is applying for 4% low-income housing tax credits from TCAC. The Housing Department also requests approval to fund 8 of the 10 projects from Home Investment Partnership Program funds and McKinney Act funds. 2 other projects are not requesting any Affordable Housing Trust Fund funding, but the department plans to issue letters of support for those projects. The CAO concurs with the proposed support for these 10 projects and the related funding, and we would like to add that there is an additional recommendation to, which is item number 1G in the CAO report, which replaces the staff report for Norwood Learning Village, which was included in the original housing transmittal. It replaces this with the report in attachment B, which corrects the address of the project. So with that change, we would recommend approval of the Housing Department transmittal.
Okay. Can we get public comment? Antonia Ramirez and Monica Mejia, Link Housing.
Thank you very much. Los Angeles Housing and Community Investment Department, all of you should be fired. You need the royal boot out. One, you have done a deplorable job when it comes to allocating whether they are the projects to house military veterans. First and foremost, military veterans, whether they are uniformed or ununiformed, active or inactive, if that's okay with you. And our pilots, again, first and foremost, our military. Do you see military veterans here? No, we see a bunch of gangbangers and wetbacks coming here demanding a house, and that's not right. First and foremost, we house our military. First and foremost, our military veterans, they are hurting out there. How many of them are hurting out there? Have you walked around and fed or helped house any of these? Have you seen many of them sick? At night when they sleep on the air vents, they're eaten or chewed up with cockroaches? No blankets, nothing? They're military veterans. And we're housing these wetbacks? Are you kidding me? I'm angry. House the military veterans first.
Thank you. Your time is up. Miss
I'm Monica.
Monica Mejia.
Hello, my name is Monica Mejia, and I'm with Link Housing. I wanted to thank you all very, very much for reviewing all these applications and the transmittal from HCID. Our project is one of the projects on the list that is recommended to be funded. It is called Mosaic Gardens at Westlake, and it's a very large project. It's 125 units, really close to here, actually, just downtown adjacent. It's an intergenerational project with a portion for families, a portion for seniors, and a homeless component on both sides. A large community room, that's a 2-level community room where we'll have services. One service provider is OPCC, and they'll do the special needs services. And the other service provider is Link Cares, a department in my office. And they'll do services for everyone, family programs, children's programs, and there'll also be a nice gym. Thank you so very much for considering everybody, and
Thank you, Monica. Okay, can we hear from Herman and Wayne? Mr. Wayne Cat.
Are you done too? Are we not surprised that today the homeless continue to be the problematic problem of the city of Los Angeles?
Sorry, one moment, please.
Yes, sir.
Who's speaking?
Which one?
Who's speaking?
You told me I can't speak on two. You just threw me a card.
No, my understanding was that Wayne was supposed to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
They took my microphone off.
You're going to have to reach over.
Well, it
that one.
used to be 4 microphones, so for the record, you should investigate with the LAPD who stole the 4th microphone, because there were 4 of them last time. Anyway.
Subject matter, please.
Okay, well, I mean, that speaks to homelessness. Somebody needs a microphone for when they're living in their tent.
Subject matter.
Yes, anyway, we pointed out, some lady mentioned something about gangbangers. Well, the homeless have to deal with a lot of street crime, and there should be accommodations for the disabled, especially mentally disabled, when they're being accosted on the streets because they have to live on the streets. One of the things that you voted to do the other day was to not criminalize more homelessness when you should be, instead of criminalizing it, you should be incentivizing developers and project owners to provide affordable housing. That's really the solution. Thank you.
Herman, please proceed.
Yes. Now, going back on the subject of homelessness, we already know that you have no problem with allowing people to keep their possessions, Mr. Cedillo. But
The subject matter here is, do you agree or not agree that we should fund the housing for low-income and affordable units as delineated in this item?
No, I'm all for it.
Good.
But the problem is,
Thank
the
you.
plan has to give to those who are in need, those who are making the request based on their identity of being homelessness. The same fucking way the city kicked me out of my house after 10 years making accusations against me. How illegal can that get? And then you want to reform those people that you use the assertive force of the law enforcement to drag your fucking ass out of your house at 10 o'clock at night and
You need to
accuse
stay
you.
on topic, and also
I
you
am
need
I'm
to...
talking about homeless people.
Narrow the focus to the subject matter before.
So the narrowing of the focus is I've been asking to be placed in a fucking home and not on the streets, on a sidewalk or a street.
Sir, if you continue to cause a disruption,
I'm not
we
being
will ask you
disruptive.
not to speak.
I'm being
No, subject matter,
expressive,
Herman.
and I'm overly expressive, and I thanks the deal for defending me against people like you. And my last 10 seconds, all I can say is, I am for it. Provide people with adequate housing and sustainable housing based on their income and not on discrimination under the American Disability Act. Duh.
So we're ready to take an action? Okay, Mr. Senator, we're prepared to adopt the CAO report. Oh, I'm sorry. You can't.
I'd make the motion that we adopt the report.
Let me deliberate on that for a second. Mr. Fuentes, thank you for that motion. I'm prepared to support that. I second and support that. So be the order. Thank you.
That takes us to item number 4, which is a HCID and CAO report relative to authorizing the proposers selected through an RFP for general manager's hearing services.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members. Nick Campbell with the CAO's office, joined by...
Good afternoon, Roya Babazadeh from HCID.
The item before you is a request from Housing to approve the results of an RFP to select contractors to provide general managers hearings services for the rent stabilization and housing code enforcement programs, and to negotiate and execute professional service agreements, or PSAs, with the selected contractors. Each contract would have a 12-month term beginning August 1st, 2015 through July 31st, 2016, with two 12-month renewal options. Additionally, the department requests authority to negotiate and execute a PSA with one of the selected contractors, ADR Coach, for a 12-month term beginning retroactive to June 1st through May 31st, 2016, with two 12-month renewal options. The total annual compensation for all the selected contractors would be $180,000. The proposed PSAs would not impact the general fund, as funding would be provided by fee funds, and our office concurs with the recommendations of the department. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. That's it. Concur?
Is there any question I can respond?
No, I don't think so. Mr. Senator?
Not here.
I'd move that we adopt the report.
Okay.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, we have cards on that item.
Yes, Herman and Wayne. Is it Wayne? Cat.
Yes, but for the record, one of the microphones is still missing, though. Okay, so, $180,000, housing code enforcement, rent stabilization, but we got this HCIDLA. It's all these acronyms. Just call it homelessness. Just put it into one fund. One fund. Add up how much it would cost to buy leases and put these people in these leased apartments. Instead of spending time going over and doing house code enforcement, because what happens, unfortunately, when the code enforcement officers come out and inspect, usually they want a payoff. So it costs a lot to pay off these inspectors. So vote no on this item. Thank you.
Herman?
So there we go with rent stabilization for code enforcement programs. I can't relate my bad scenario based on enforcement by the so-called LAPD and the City of Los Angeles for illegal use and force. Unusual, unequal treatment, and foreseeable punishment. So if this continues to be the subject of my particular case, and I'm able to come here and articulate it before the public, think of the many other people as brought up on the subject of matter and material who are mentally out of service to speak out and be heard on the conditions and terms based on this item. I am opposed to it, and I hope you do so as well.
Thank you. We have a motion.
So moved.
So moved. Second? So be
Mr.
the
Chair,
order.
the committee should adopt the CAO report.
Yeah, motion to adopt the CAO report.
That takes us to item number 5, HCID report and resolution and CAO2 report relative to the authorization to issue up to $9.5 million in multifamily condo bonds for the LA Colorado Terrace Apartments project.
Who's reporting on this? Item number 5. There we go.
Nick Campbell, CAO. And
Yes.
I'm joined by
Yaneli Ruiz from the Housing Department.
Thank you for being here.
and CAO is going to be reporting on this item in council.
Yes.
Meeting on Friday.
I'm available if there's any questions.
Mr. Fuentes?
I don't have any questions.
My only question is, my understanding is that the goal here is to provide 77 units of affordable housing. And we just want to make sure that we're tracking this. Is that correct?
Yes, it's continuing to provide the same units.
Okay. All right. Public comment. Can we ask Mr. Herman, Mr. Wayne Katz, Antonio Ramirez to come and speak on the matter with respect to creating 77 units of affordable housing? See, 42 units of affordable housing, 35 at market rate.
Well, we're all witnesses to what the CRA has done. No Section 8, no HUD, no such thing as affordable housing when you're being outsourced or gentrified by gentrification by the white supremacists of this city of Los Angeles as they continue to promote the so-called projects of multiple family. Really, why don't you first take the first step in getting everyone's possessions who are homeless and placing them in a Section 8 or even in a HUD afforded housing, something that is actually
We want to
tangible.
focus this a little bit on the subject matter.
It is on the subject matter because it's talking about, Mr. Cedillo, all this money, this
Talking about
95000 multifamily conduit taxable bond.
42 units affordable.
I'm right, and they were affordable up to a point when the bond money was said it would be used for people of multiple families to have a home. But look on the streets of Los Angeles today, not many families are in those
Sir.
homes. Thank you.
Wayne?
Thank you very much. I would go ahead and say yes.
Antonia, just for the
Yes,
record.
thank you, Antonia Ramirez. For the record, yes, I am for this with the condition, and only with the conditions, that these multifamily conduit homes are housed by military veterans and pilots who are on furlough, and/or senior citizens, American senior citizens, and/or American baby boomers. Again, most of the population who are homeless are American citizens, not wetbacks or gangbangers. They're out there committing crimes, thank you, and accosting us. But not all of us are mentals.
Caution you on the use of
So
your
having
language
said
as
that,
you're causing a disruption to the meeting.
say what?
Would caution you on the use of your language as you're causing a disruption.
I caution you will stand on the First Amendment. Remind you, the First Amendment, freedom of speech.
I
Look it
understand
up.
the First
Limitations
Amendment.
So,
but we also question
again,
you on
and
the
I thank
disruption.
you, again, we have to house first and foremost our military. Let's meet that burden first. Alleviate America, alleviate our military families, house these 42 units, which isn't very many, and put these military veterans in and get the wetbacks and gangbangers deported out of here. Hasta la vista. No more. And again, God bless America and the United States military.
Wayne? Cat?
Yep. Well, you got to be like a cat to catch these mice. $9,500,000 for this. 42 units, affordable out of 77-unit project. And all these names, multifamily conduit taxable bonds, what the fuck is that? It's just money. Just call it payoff, especially in CD14 with Wheezy Weezar. I mean, there isn't a project he doesn't do that doesn't have little tricks to it. But it's already been decided. The puppet show is always here with the puppets. Everybody gets up. There is zero chance that anybody's going to watch or even question this. $9.5 million. How many people could we house that are homeless if we spent that money on rented apartments instead of this crap?
We have a motion to approve the HCID report, request the CAO report.
I'd make the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. So be the order.
That takes us to item number 6, which is an HCID report relative to a Ninth Amendment to the contract with Restore Neighborhoods LA, Inc.
Hi, I'm Tim Elliott from the Housing Department.
For the record.
Manuel Bernal, Housing and Community Investment Department.
So this item requests authority to renew the contract for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program with our subrecipient, Restore Neighborhoods Los Angeles. They've been operating the program on our behalf since 2009. Specifically, we'd asked to extend the term of their contract for 1 year till February of next year and increase their administration funding by $94,000, which would increase the total contract amount from $140.7 million to $140.8 million. And then extend the payoff of a loan, the seed money loan that we gave them of $700,000 for the same term. And also, there was a carve out of that money that was used to pay interest on a line of credit that they got from the Enterprise Foundation, which we found is not necessary to, that could be used with regular program funds, and we don't need to use our seed money for that, so we could free up those funds to be used for other activities. And then they've downsized and moved to smaller offices and have some excess office equipment, and we'd like to allow them to liquidate that and return the money to HCID. And in the meantime, we'd like to grant them a permit to enter to a vacant library that we own to store their, on Crenshaw, to store their equipment while it's being liquidated.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, could you give us an idea where these, where the units are that have been completed under this program? Kind of a
Okay, so in
where these properties are?
well, there's been 900 affordable housing units produced. 257 of them have been in CD9.
How many?
257, and 191 of them are in CD1.
Thank you.
And 40 of them are in CD7. And RNLA was the general partner on the project in Chinatown that we did, which is 125 units. So there was almost 200 single-family homes, and then the rest were multifamily homes. We put NSP money into the Taylor Yards project. And then there's several large multifamily projects. RNLA was the general partner for most of those. New Economics for Women was a partner with NSP money for the one at Taylor Yard.
Okay. Is there money left in the grant? How much?
Yes, there's at the end of last quarter, we had approximately $7 million in program income, and then there was about $4 million in grant money that hadn't been expended yet. But we've met our overall goals, spending goals of between grant funds and program income. We've exceeded the grant amount, and so there's still money to be pulled down.
Okay. Just to balance it out.
Right. So that's why RNLA needs to continue to do these activities. There's vacant land that they own that needs to be developed, and some of the sites could be done as small lot subdivisions.
Okay. Mr. Fuentes?
No question.
Okay. We have public comment. Wayne, Cat, and Herman.
Prime example of what a ripoff is. $140 million for 900 units of housing. That's $1,400,000 per unit. In Encino, there's a house in the market with a 5,400 square foot lot, I just looked at it Sunday, and 3,100 square feet. It's on the market for $1,204,000. But you're going to take a lousy fucking apartment and you're going to charge the taxpayers $1,400,000 on that per unit? In these CDs, you could be building those in Beverly Hills, in Pacific Palisades, like that piece of property you're going to be auctioning tomorrow for $1,275,000.
900 million.
Disgusting. It's just disgusting. I mean, what a waste. Amazing. Just amazing.
So again, we come across loan, credit, liquidate, terms of no return, all monies granted to administrative waste out of $140 million, but with a good savings of $11 million. I can't cap what Mr. Spindler brought up, the waste, the fraud, and the abuse of the monies that belongs to the taxpayers to provide adequate housing. I can't say it any more clear than that as Mr. Felipe Fuentes sits there playing Crush Dog on his little iPad because
Herman, focus yourself.
I know, I'm focused.
The math-
I just
math
feel
is
I just
off.
feel embarrassed that
Sir,
a
we ask that you
councilman
address the committee as
a
a whole and not
councilman-
an individual.
under this item
The math is off. Also.
cannot understand that the increase for the contract amount of the $94,000 and the amount not to exceed, but it has exceeded because you did nothing with it but abuse the taxpayers foolishly. Didn't you hear?
We have a motion to instruct HSID to report back with a detailed analysis of the 900 homes acquired, rehabbed, or newly constructed, along with where they are located and their current status. Can we get a motion to approve the HSID report and to request a CAO report?
I'd make the motion.
Okay. Thank you. So be the order. Yes. And we're going to take a report, right? Got it. work items 7 and 8 together. I see a lot of people are here for that subject matter. The next two items are obviously very important to the city because they represent landmark legislation. We are in an effort to protect tenants by ensuring that they have earthquake-safe structure and making good public policy by listening to everybody who's here today. My comments and disposition remains the same. We want to make sure that there's not 100% pass-through. At the same time, we've been working, my staff in the department, and I applaud the participants, owners and landlords and tenants who have been working on today's hearing. Look, at the bottom line is, doesn't matter. An earthquake is indiscriminate, and it'll make all of us poor or homeless if we don't prepare for it. It's not just a question of if, but when. And I think we should be doing no less than convening meetings and matters like this so that we can be prepared. So with that, colleagues, any other comments?
Mr. Chair, if I could just briefly read the items into the record.
Yep.
Item 7 is a CAO report, and item 8 is a motion Cedillo Englander regarding the seismic retrofit program.
Okay. So we have public comment. We'll do public comment first on items 7 and 8. Beverly Kenworth, California Apartment Association. John Howard, Central City Association. Cliff Stanton, Renew Financial. And Crystal Crawford. Crystal Crawford? Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Beverly Kenworthy with the California Apartment Association, Los Angeles. The California Apartment Association has been pleased to be working on this important ordinance. From the beginning, we have always supported the mandate. Our concern has always been how do we implement and how do we implement effectively. We understand there's concerns on both sides for affordability. And we're working through those issues with the RSO working group, and we appreciate the Housing Department's leadership on that. We really encourage the city to move forward on speaking with lenders, on having the lenders work with the PACE program. I think there's some issues there, and figure out what is that tipping point,
Right.
Between what owners need to be able to finance this, because I think some owners might be able to do it on their own, some are not going to be able to, and what can people pay? Some people, this won't be that hard for them. For some people, it could be extremely hard. So we're hoping to find that balance, and we'll continue to work on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm John Howland with the Central City Association, and I'm going to take up where Beverly left off. A number of the financial institutions who are CCA members have expressed their concerns over the ramifications of using PACE financing to help pay for the seismic retrofits. CCA is fully supportive of using incentives and grants to help property owners comply with the seismic requirements. However, the CAO report appears to underplay the problems with using PACE financing to achieve these outcomes. It identifies but does not really address the problem. PACE financing typically requires PACE to become the first lien on loans and mortgages. That is, in a default, PACE is paid before anyone else. And this lien remains with the land even after a sale. The FHFA-backed or owned loans are subordinate. The result is that the FHFA, which operates Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, will not buy these loans from the originators. This ties up funds that are otherwise available to all property owners for mortgages and other forms of property loans. On numerous occasions, the FHFA has expressed its concerns to the state of California and municipalities about some liens being advanced to super priority status over Fannie and Freddie first lien loans. Please consider these factors. Thank you.
Cliff Stanton.
Yeah, hi, my name is Cliff Staten. I'm Executive Vice President of Rooney Financial. We're based in Oakland. Our founder and CEO, Cisco DeVries, came up with the idea of PACE when he worked with the city of Berkeley, and we now work with over 300 governments around, local governments in the state of California. Very interested in working with the city of LA, and we have been financing throughout the state. We have raised $600 million in capital to We're ready to put it to work on behalf of the City of Los Angeles and your property owners, both residential and commercial. So urge you to support this item.
Thank you for being here. Ms. Crawford?
Good afternoon, Mr. Cedillo and committee members. Crystal Crawford, I'm the Southern California Regional Director for Y Green Energy Fund. I am here today in support of item 7 and the recommendation that California First and Fig Tree Financing be added as certified PACE providers for the City of Los Angeles. At the same time, I'm here to ask that the committee consider directing the CAO's office to add Y Green Energy Fund to the report that's been provided. We would also like to be an authorized provider in the city. We are the #1 provider for PACE financing for commercial and multifamily residential in the state of California. We're the second largest residential provider in the state of California. We are privately funded. Like California First and Fig Tree, we are able to finance seismic retrofit projects as well as water conservation and other energy efficiency projects. So we would appreciate the committee's consideration of directing the CAO to augment the report to include Y Green Energy Fund. We are already working with staff in the CAO's office to provide that information, and we would hope to have that come back to the committee as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wayne Cat, Thelmy Perez, and Zoila Cantu, and Noemi Armendariz.
Another wonderful scheme by the crooked city council. You're going to put another thing on the backs of the beleaguered property owners and taxpayers. Now you call it seismic retrofit. And you have to go to the gangster bankers to get your financing. Sucks, man. And it is disgusting, especially the chairman, who's Mr. Civil Rights, to be putting this on the back of property owners and encumbering these properties. Like the one man was trying to mention, who you only gave a minute to. He was going to talk about FHAA and subordinate liens. So it's not a good thing to do this. It's horrible. It will decrease the value of these properties and take the tax base down in the next economic crash. And for the record, the game that Mr. Fuentes is playing is called Candy Crush. I just want to get that in there for the record.
Subject matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Perez?
Hi, good afternoon, committee. My name is Thelmy Perez, representing the LA Human Right to Housing Collective. We all deserve to be safe in the event of a natural disaster, and we applaud your efforts and the effort of the mayor towards resiliency when faced with the inevitable, as you put it. However, as a tenant advocate, as a tenant myself, and as a concerned citizen of Los Angeles, that a city that's become known as the most unaffordable city in the country, as well as been referenced as the homeless capital of this country, I think it's very difficult to stomach the discussion that's taking place here, that which is of a pass-through. And a pass-through is basically a discussion about an additional rent increase over the annual allowable rent increase. So that's multiple rent increases per year for tenants is what we're talking about. So the discussion of a pass-through is one that concludes that housing in the city should be more unaffordable and that people should lose their housing in order to be safe during an earthquake. It's a discussion that ignores the severity of the housing crisis that's being experienced by 65% of renters who cannot afford their rents, and where 4 out of 5 of the city's poorest are already paying over 50% of their incomes. We support looking for additional financing sources, and we will continue in the discussion to try to make sure that's possible. We don't want this burden to be an additional burden on the backs of tenants.
Zoila?
I'm going to translate for them as well, if that's okay.
Mi nombre es Zoila Catú. Yo vengo representando a la mayor parte de los inquilinos de Los Ángeles.
My name is Zoila Cantú. I'm here representing the major part of tenants in Los Angeles.
Espérese un momento, señor, para que traduzca, por favor. Gracias.
Okay.
Siga.
Por la razón de que la solución de que nos arreglen los apartamentos para un terremoto está muy bien.
The solution that our apartment buildings are fixed in case of an earthquake is a really good one.
Pero que no nos pasen a nosotros los costos por la sencilla razón que no podemos pagar más rentas.
But that the costs aren't passed on to us because for the simple reason that we cannot afford another rent increase.
Porque ya es demasiado el aumento que tenemos, ya los sueldos que nosotros tenemos no nos alcanzan para eso.
The rent increases that we have are already so much, and the incomes that we have do not meet these increases.
Y los inversionistas lamentablemente dicen que arreglan los apartamentos y no es así.
And the developers say that they're fixing our apartments, but that's not what's happening.
Entonces necesitamos de que pongan un poquito de mano en conciencia de los trabajadores y de los que pagamos renta, que no alcanzamos a pagar los aumentos que nos están poniendo más.
So we need you to be conscious about the plight of the workers and of tenants who cannot afford increased rents.
Y pues mi familia o paga renta o tiene para no o comer, no alcanza para todo.
So in my family, for example, we either pay the rent or we buy our food. There's not enough money for everything.
Ese es mi comentario.
That's my comment.
Thank you. Noemí Armendariz.
Sí, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Noemí Armendariz. Vengo de 2913 Sur Flower Street y estoy apoyando lo que dijo la señora Zoila. Es demasiado lo que nos están subiendo de renta. Somos familias de bajos recursos.
Good afternoon. My name is Noemi Armendariz. I live at 2913 South Flower Street, and I'm here supporting what my neighbor Zoila said. It's too much what we are being asked to pay in rent increases.
Y todavía que nos quieran dar ese pago por los arreglos para el terremoto, no sé cómo decirlo.
And to have an additional increase for earthquake fixes, earthquake retrofit, is too much.
Porque todavía tenemos que estar batallando con que nosotros a veces tenemos que hacer pagos para nuestros apartamentos por reparaciones que no nos hace el dueño. Y es demasiado para nosotros.
We're already struggling. A lot of us have to make repairs to our own units because our landlords refuse to do that. So it's too much to ask for an increase.
Estamos también, no sé si sea el mismo tema o no, pero estamos batallando por la discriminación de que en el edificio donde vivo, al estudiante que vive de la USC sí le están arreglando y sin costo alguno. Y a nosotros como familia sí tenemos que pagar por el costo de los arreglos que se hagan en el edificio.
And I don't know if this is within the subject or not, but for my family, in my building, we're also experiencing gentrification, where many USC students have moved in and they are getting the necessary repairs to their units, but the families are not getting those repairs, and so we're having to make the repairs ourselves.
Con esos incrementos, al rato vamos a estar también sin techo. Va a ser más gasto para la ciudad.
With all of the rent increases, at some moment, we'll also be homeless.
Thank you. Sheila Coleman. Jay Kumar. Harold Greenberg. And F. Stephen Mazik. Okay. Sheila?
Yeah, Chela.
Chela. All right.
Chela. Yes, my name is Chela with Los Angeles Community Action Network. Regarding the retrofit, I feel like it's classist. I feel like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Where folks are already struggling. You just heard two ladies talk about their families and how they struggle to either pay food or pay rent. Why are we asking people to pay more where they can't even survive in what they have? What's next? To keep a door to keep a door, we're gonna, raise the rent more. I think it just makes no sense at all. I feel as a tenant of Los Angeles, I do live in Skid Row. I feel like raising the rents would be unfair and unjust. Not 50%, not 30%, 0%. I think we should not raise the rents at all. There should be no rent increases. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay Kumar.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Kumar, and I represent Partner Engineering and Science as a structural engineer. I would like to urge the committee to consider the seismic retrofit program, mostly to improve the resilience of communities in the surrounding Los Angeles area. I think this is an incredibly valuable thing for the communities to maintain doing the daily activities that everybody needs to perform. I was hoping to share cost data. I don't think I have time to do that within 1 minute. I would like to say that on the 75 projects that we've been involved with retrofit design in the last 2 years, We've successfully been able to implement retrofit without relocation of any tenants and without any disruption to tenant activities inside of any units. And so please consider that as a component of this. It can be done in a way that is non-disruptive. Thank you very much.
If I may ask you a question, and those projects have been within the boundaries of the city of LA or just the Southern California area in general? Or?
We've done about 50 in Los Angeles in the city, 25 in San Francisco. Okay. And we've been able to see contemplating pricing is a little bit confusing because a lot of times people consider price per units or price per parking units. We like to think in terms of price per affected parking unit. And we see an average cost around $5,000 per parking unit, typically less for the two-story buildings because there's less mass involved with the structure.
Okay, thank you. Harold Greenberg.
Harold Greenberg from AGLA. The question here is to save lives, and this is what this is about. It's not just a question of dollars, but the question is, who's going to fund it? Sacramento's not going to do it. They've already told us that. I have a proposal. I've already given a copy to the Housing Department and to Mr. Price. I can give it to you gentlemen. And it's frankly the insurance companies and the banks. They're the ones that are going to take financial hits if we have another disaster. And they will earn their money, frankly, through interest, and they will earn it through tax credits. They get the tax credit, not the owner, not the tenant, etc. What we're talking about is a symbiotic relationship. It's not all in favor of owners or tenants. A tenant without an owner is homeless, and that's what everybody's been talking about. An owner without a tenant is bankrupt. We've got to work together. We've got to stop being antagonistic, using curse words, profanity. We got a problem out there. We need affordable housing, and we can't squeeze everybody. We've got to put a proposal there, and I have a copy. I'd like to hand it, if I can, to Mr. Williams, and maybe this could be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mazek?
Hello, I'm with the Asbestos and Lead Poisoning Prevention Association. We strongly support the proposed ordinance. We'd point out that once an infant or toddler is exposed to lead, the damage to their nervous system is permanent, the degradation to their IQ is permanent. Once a retrofit worker or tenant is exposed to asbestos, it's in their lungs forever. It doesn't go away. So please do not allow this to become an occasion for an asbestos and lead poisoning disaster. We have proposed just 2 sentences to the ordinance to require the buildings be inspected. That's already in state, federal, and local regulations, which are unfortunately not well enforced. So it's a very simple mechanism to prevent problems and actually to decrease the cost of the retrofits so there's not surprise delays and so forth during construction. Thank you.
Okay, can we hear from James Porter, Steve Diaz, and Wesley Walker, and Herman.
Start?
Hold on. Mr. Porter?
Hi, my name is Mr. Porter, James Porter. I'm a member of LACAD. I want to make it very clear because I surely don't understand what's going on here. Landlords are responsible for their own property, not tenants. Why are tenants asked to pay for landlord when it's their responsibility? Are you going to make me a business partner if I pay you extra money? Do I become part of your business? Okay, so if you're going to make me as a tenant pay, then I should be your, a business partner of yours. It's unfair because, like you heard many stories tonight, people can't afford it. That's like every month, that's another rent. Some people just can't afford it. And sooner or later, you're going to cause homeless. We're in the business trying to stop me and you, the committee, to stop homeless. We're not trying to build more homeless. And if this continue, you will have people become homeless. And that's what we don't want. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Steve.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Steve Diaz, and I am with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. We applaud your efforts in making sure that the city is safe, and definitely feel that the city needs to be safer in ensuring that these buildings don't fall down. The important thing to note is what happens if, what good is it for these buildings not to fall down if people cannot afford to live in them? The city of Los Angeles already is one of the most unaffordable cities in the nation. Using the numbers mentioned earlier, for example, $5,000 divided out for 4 years equals an additional $104 a month. Who can afford to pay $104 a month if you just pass through 100%? Well, we applaud the council member and chairman's efforts not to ensure that 100% is not passed through. It definitely cannot be anything towards passing through towards tenants. Subsidies need to be explored. Other means of financing these rehabs need to happen to ensure that tenants can continue to live in these buildings and landlords can continue to also prosper from these properties as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wesley Walker, and I'm a member of the Los Angeles Community Action Network. And I'm a vet. I got vet subsidies, Section 8, to rent an apartment. But, you know, and I understand that every year there's a raise in the rent, you know. And I'm living on a fixed income, okay? So I can't understand why the tenants responsible for what the landlord owns. It's totally unfair, a rent increase like that at 100%. And I just don't think the landlord and the city should require the resident to pay these enormous amounts of money to get a building retrofitted when this problem came along a long time ago that they knew that they have to have these buildings retrofitted. There's other ways that you can get this money to have these buildings retrofitted, such as TFAR money, things like that, instead of taking that money and wasting it on Broadway.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Herman.
Unfair, insensitive discrimination, creating an economic financial hardship known as PACE, seismic retrofit program called an ordinance. Bottom line is, if you're a landlord, you don't need insurance. We have something called FEMA, and FEMA bails out everyone, no matter what the situation, catastrophic or not. If it's complete, total destruction, other than it can't replace a life, but who would care? Felipe Fuentes wouldn't care. I know Price and Cedillo care.
Sir, we ask that remarks be made to the committee as a whole.
They listen in
not to any
to
single
the
member.
unfair
It's in
and
response to a
insensitive
question from a member.
discrimination regarding this ordinance. Stop preventing this hardship. Provide more economic for who? The landlords who are attacked by this selfish ordinance. Again, welcome FEMA, federal government.
Ryan Donovan.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Donovan. I'm a director at Deutsche Bank. I'm here representing the Alliance Energy Program, one of the PACE program teams you're considering for adoption. I offer my comments as firsthand experience with the City of San Francisco on their mandatory soft story program. A couple of years ago, the mayor and City Council enacted a mandatory ordinance that would affect 5,000 properties in the City of San Francisco, multifamily buildings, pre-1978 wood frame construction. We've been taking applications for the last couple of months. Over 300 contractors and specialists within the seismic field, engineers, design, contractors, have signed up with the program. We've had about 4% of the property owners subject to the ordinance sign up and apply for financing. It's about 200 applications thus far. We've worked with banks on obtaining consent. We expect many of the property owners will want to do energy efficiency and renewable projects concurrent with the seismic retrofit that often increases cash flow, net cash flow of the buildings. We stand ready to work with the city and property owners. Thank you.
Is that what's your assessment of, you said 4% apply, was that A good number, a small number,
It's
big
only the
number?
first 3 months of taking applications. My sense is that most property owners will wait until the deadline is somewhat imminent. And so there's a tiering of the 5,000 buildings. Many will wait 2 years. My hope is that there's some urgency and that they can spread across the pipeline of applications only for the building department, for the contractor, for a number of needs. So I think we've done well so far. There's more to go.
And what do you think the participation level will be from building owners?
Well, it's mandatory, so it'll be 100%. PACE is just a voluntary program,
Right,
so,
right.
we've seen some property owners use their mortgage,
Right.
use cash and equity. It's one option. I could easily see this using 20% plus participation using PACE. The reason being, it's 20 or 30-year financing that is very atypical. A regular commercial loan, CMBS, or a regular portfolio loan usually has a balloon due in 7 or 10 years. So PACE offers a pretty big advantage of 20 or 30 years with no acceleration, and that's why I think you'll see a higher uptake with the product.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have Antonio Hernandez. Are you speaking on this item? Okay. Antonio? This is, you have public comment down, but we are wrapping up with 7-8. Okay, thank you. All right, can I get the mayor's office up here on the discussion? Hi, how's it going?
Hi. It's Thalia Polychronos from the Mayor's Office of Homeland Security and Public Safety.
Yes.
I'm joined by
Ashley Atkinson from the Mayor's Office of Economic Development on the Planning and Housing team.
So just for an overview of the program, as you are aware, council members, over the past year and a half or so, we've been engaged in a long process with Dr. Lucy Jones and a number of other stakeholders, technical experts and city staff, looking at the city's most critical vulnerabilities following a seismic event. During this process, we looked at a few different areas that Dr. Jones identified in her research as being the most critical to the city's resilience and safety. These included communications infrastructure, water, and certainly our buildings, which are of interest today. So the soft first story and the non-ductile reinforced concrete buildings have been identified by Dr. Jones and our other technical engineering and other experts as being the ones at most risk of collapse in a seismic event. So we have been working closely with the Department of Building and Safety, Housing, and many others, of course, in a deliberative process to identify the best way to retrofit these buildings to ensure that they're seismically sound and that they do not, pose any life safety risks following a significant earthquake, which Dr. Jones and the USGS have indicated is not a matter of if it will happen, but when. As you're all aware, the majority of our software story buildings are also rent-controlled buildings, and they are the largest piece of our housing stock in terms of affordable units. And so, for that reason, we feel it's of the utmost importance that we actually retrofit them so that they remain standing following an event, so that we do not have a situation where many of these buildings come down following an earthquake, and then these units disappear from the RSO stock entirely. There are approximately 12,000 buildings that are software story buildings that have been identified by Building and Safety during the course of this work. We've been working closely with them and tenant housing advocates to identify the best way to do this. The draft ordinance that has been proposed has identified technical parameters for completing these retrofits. It's anticipated that the work is primarily external, would not require any dislocation of tenants or parking, et cetera. So that's, and I defer to Ashley for additional information on the housing.
Sure, I could just add a couple of things. That the ordinance as proposed does only apply to buildings of 2 or more stories with 4 or more units. It's just, from the perspective of the engineers, a 1-story building obviously or a building with fewer than 4 units doesn't pose the same life safety risk. And so that's why those particular...
It's fourplexes and above.
Correct.
So that's about financing and possible opportunities that would exist for financing.
Right. Those are, it's considered to be, at that point, multifamily, I believe, or single family is up to 4 and multifamily is over 4. It's considered to be a commercial property at that point. So the investment or the financing that's available does differ.
You want to tell us about our successes in Sacramento, where we're at?
Sure. AB 428 was not included in the governor's budget, but it is still possible for it to go forward as legislation. And that's the tax credit bill proposed by Assemblymember Nazarian. And, you know, the chances are still good that it could pass. There's been a lot of support for it so far. And that would put in a total of $60 million over 5 years, or $12 million per year within that period. Only cities with retrofit mandates would be eligible for those tax credits. Those currently include San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, and Santa Monica. So if we did not have a retrofit mandate in place, we wouldn't be eligible for that. The bill will next be heard by the Senate Governance and Finance Committee on the 1st.
Okay.
And we've had a lot of support from our stakeholder groups that we've been working with too on the tenants and landlords side for that bill to go through. So we're hopeful for its chances of success.
Okay. With this.
So I'd like to get housing up here as well, if at all possible, and the CAO, if it makes sense. So to me, it seems that the financing of the mandate is going to be the most critical piece of this, and I'm just wondering out loud. Well, let me ask you, I haven't read the legislation, but by when does the City of Los Angeles have to have a mandate in place so that we are eligible if and when Mr. Nazarian's legislation actually gets signed by the governor?
It's my understanding that the tax credits would become available on January 1st, and that we wouldn't have to have it in place on January 1st, but we would, however period of time.
We'd have to adopt something shortly thereafter.
Because the amount of money is finite, the longer
and there are
it
other
takes
cities with
the City of LA to join, the higher the chances are that the pot will have shrunk.
Right. So I'm optimistic, but I understanding sort of the appetite that this governor has had on tax credits, I'm not sure that I would want to predicate our chances or the passage of a mandate based on maybe having state legislation go through. So I guess for housing, I'd want to ask, what is it that other municipalities are doing? It seems to me that in San Francisco, for example, the equity and everything necessary to be able to finance the retrofitting of these types of buildings was sort of put in place first. What is our plan? Because it seems to me the concerns that the residents have are absolutely critical. And so if we can't figure out a way to help subsidize or seek some tax relief for the property owner, we're looking at whatever the status quo is, which is there's a pass-through that's allowable now. Is that correct?
Yes, Anna Ortega, Housing Department. Yes, there are provisions in place in the rent stabilization ordinance now that would allow for a pass-through.
So just, I gave a lot at you, so I apologize. So help me understand what the current rent stabilization ordinance says as it speaks to pass-throughs. What's currently the law?
So currently, there's 3 different types of pass-throughs that are available for different kinds of upgrades or improvements to rental properties. Some of these programs have already been used for voluntary retrofits, and that would be the capital improvement program that allows a pass-through of about 50% of the cost of the work over a period of 60 months, though it can be extended if the total eligible amount exceeds the 60 months.
Is there a cap to how much can be passed through in a single year?
Yes, there's a cap to the monthly rent increase, and all the programs have caps, but for capital improvements, it's $55. There's another program called Primary Renovation that is also a possibility, and that allows 100% recovery over 15 years. So the monthly amount is less, right, because it's amortized over a longer time.
But 100%
But
is
100%.
allowable versus the 50% in the first program.
Correct.
Okay.
And that has a cap of 10% of the rent.
Okay.
So it's a different cap. And then the most indicated program were the city to adopt a mandatory program would be, under our current rules, would be for the rehabilitation program that also amortizes 100% over 5 years with a $75 cap. And then if I could backtrack a little bit to your earlier part of your question about what is San Francisco doing. So San Francisco is in its early stages. We've communicated with them pretty often through this process, but they also offer a PACE program. They also early on convened meetings with lenders and contractors and so on, and just sort of had a goodwill agreement that encouraged lenders to finance this kind of work. From our discussions with the lenders on their sort of partner list, they're offering the regular programs, which it seems to be mainly lines of credit that they're using. Some of them are making sure that the work qualifies under their rules. What's different in San Francisco than here is that they are amortizing 100% over 20 years. So in the working group that we've been meeting with, we have explained that depending on the different aspects of the programs, you come up with different scenarios for the possible monthly retrofit, monthly pass-through to the tenant. So depends on how long you amortize it. It depends on what percent you pass through. The current programs we have are either 50 or 100. Depends on what the cap is. It depends, like in primary renovation, you can, in an effort to ease the initial burden on the tenant, it's split, so you get 5% of the amount the first year and the other 5% the second year. Remember, that was the one with the 10% cap. So there's different factors that we can alter to design a program.
And I should have started here. Thank you to the mayor's office for helping make this something that we have to deal with in short order. I mean, it's absolutely overdue. And so I apologize for jumping so quickly into the financing of it, because to me that is the part that is going to give us the most heartache here, potentially, depending on how we do it. So to come back to the department, you don't have a recommendation yet, do you, on how it is that we would finance this? Because to me it seems like there's 4 buckets out there that we could potentially dip into. One, the tax credit bucket, where we could incentivize compliance, or rather ease the compliance with the mandate if we were able to get tax credits and the authority to issue those at the state level. There's potentially, the equity world out there saying, hey, we will figure out how to make this an easy financeable situation for property owners. There's potentially the assessment through something like the PACE program, albeit it seems that we're precluded currently from seismic retrofits in the current construct of PACE programs, but I imagine am I getting that wrong? The reports seem to indicate that we can't do seismic retrofit.
I think that, well, in San Francisco, they are using PACE.
In San Francisco, but in Los Angeles, Ms. Baga, can you help me understand that?
Sarai Baga with the CAO's office. The PACE program can handle seismic retrofit.
In Los Angeles?
It can, as long as we, adopt the actions that are recommended in the CAO staff report.
Okay, got it. All right. And so then I guess the last bucket would be just doing nothing and having the mandate done and having the owners pass through the costs. I mean, so it seems like those are the 4 areas of financing this. Am I missing an area? Or is that sort of essentially sort of the universe of options currently?
It seems to be what's currently available to us.
All right, good. So what is sort of your best thinking today in terms of how it is that we would have to either understanding that tax credits are a real possibility, but focusing on PACE and trying to understand how to work with the equity world? It seems to me that there's a way to mitigate some of the impact, because ultimately I want to pass down as little as possible to the resident. I think that there's going to be a share there for them. Zero is going to be very difficult, but what is the current thinking? Is there a mix that you all are sort of talking about, or is there a recipe that seems to be working for a municipality? And then, part B, tell me about the state loss reserve program that they've got, because the first lien subordination aspect, all of this seems to be also really tricky.
So under our current programs, under our existing rehabilitation program, which would be the most indicated program were the city to adopt something, and under the scenarios of costs that we've worked with and seen from building and safety, the current monthly pass-through per unit would be about $57 per month for the average cost that we've been able to obtain so far for Los Angeles projects of about $3,400 per unit.
And that's under the existing pass-through regime. It's not
Correct.
through a PACE program or through
Right.
some other financing.
Correct. Additionally, under current programs, as there's three that could be used, the cost would range between $24 to $75 a month, again for that average per unit cost of $3,400. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of variables that we could revise to mitigate that. So depending on the amortization period, again, current amounts range from $24 a month to $75 per month, and alternates that we've looked at would range between $14 to $21 per month. We do not have a recommendation today. Up until this point, we've been gathering the data about the average costs and just looking at the existing law and with some review of how those could be changed to arrive at a different result. But I would say that so far the group agrees that the cost shouldn't fall on any one party, but I can't say that there's any agreement on how they should be shared.
Sure, no, that's going to be the hard part. Ms. Bach, I just want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly. So your report dated June 4th, 2015 on page 3 says opt-in to PACE. Maybe I'm misreading this. So the city is already a participating agency in LA County's PACE program. However, seismic retrofit projects are not currently eligible. So how do we become eligible?
So we're recommending that the city adopt resolutions that would enable us to participate in PACE programs that are being operated by two GPAs at this point, CSCDA and CEDA. CSCDA is participating in their PACE program with Alliance Energy and Renewable Funding. CEDA has contracted with Fig Tree to provide PACE financing. I think the PACE aspect is separate from the pass-through. The PACE will provide just the financing mechanism or the ability for the property owner to gain that financing, and how that is handled thereafter is a separate issue.
I absolutely recognize that. I just want to make sure that we're making it as accessible as possible, because I think that will help mitigate however much impact the resident may or may not have. So on the PACE program, and I'm sorry, I know I said it would be the last thing, but on the PACE program, talking to housing, why can't we open that up a little bit more? It seems to me that if we have more competition, we had a testimony from Y Green, I think was the contractor. Do we have the ability to open that, to have more folks, to have our sort of more competition, ideally more contractors, to hopefully drive down your current estimates even further down?
From our perspective, I think we would recommend open market competition, so we'd have the most participants available for property owners to access. This doesn't mean that they're limited only to PACE providers. They're open to obtain financing from whatever other opportunities they can secure, but these actions would be necessary to at least provide property owners in LA to access the PACE program.
Okay. Very good. Well, let me say that I am absolutely grateful to all of you for what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. I hear loud and clear that the goal is zero pass-through, that is the goal. But we currently have laws on the books that allow us to pass through a certain amount, and what we want to do is make sure that we don't exceed that. And then the amount's going to be incredibly important here because, it is just difficult out there, and I think there's evidence that the property owners and stakeholders can work together. We witnessed it today in council on a different measure, that we're going to have to figure out something that is that sweet spot so that we maintain the absolute safety and conditions to the residents who inhabit these buildings. I mean, we really do have to endeavor to do that. So thank you for all of your hard work. I know it's far from done, and we're going to be getting together soon to make sure that we come up with something that works. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for your leadership on this.
You've asked all the questions that I had. Senator, I don't know if you got more questions.
No, great job. I agree. I think we all want to minimize the pass-through that's going to go, that may occur to tenants who are barely making it currently. But I wanted to follow your conversation on additional sources. I guess the proposal now is for Alliance, NRG, and renewable funding. What would prevent others from offering services, or is this exclusive? Is this, you're saying they could always include more later? Is that
in terms of
what's
the PACE?
thinking on that?
In terms of the PACE program,
Yes.
we reviewed the various ways that we could set up a program and found that for the city to do an RFP process would consume a lot of resources, and the existing PACE programs as they're offered through the Joint Powers Authorities would be a more efficient way for us to gain access to PACE. This report by no means is the whole sum of who we believe would be eligible participants for the PACE program for the city.
But these are currently involved with
if there are other providers who come forward, we would be happy to report back on recommendations regarding their participation. We've been contacted by Y Green earlier this week. We've started the review process. We'd be happy to report back on a recommendation regarding them if the committee so chooses.
Would you choose? Let me add.
Yeah, I would just support including as many as possible, at least opening it up to, give as much choice, many options. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. So we do choose and we do agree. Also, I'd note that it seems like a good moment in time for the state. They're balanced. They're in surplus. We have leadership coming from the both houses. The Assembly, the leadership there has a demonstrated commitment to poor people and housing and low-income housing, and we're fortunate we have a pro tem from our area who has a first responsibility to our area, and we have a governor who's been very generous, but I think does not quite yet appreciate the significance of this program and what it means to us. We also have an insurance commissioner who's very smart and very thoughtful. So I think Sacramento may have some more resources than we've outlined yet, and that we can continue to work on that. It seems to me for the state a very important investment to invest in its largest and most important city in terms of this area. Enough people can figure out the how.
I have another question.
Yeah, sure, please.
So what does the stakeholder process look like right now in terms of sort of coordinating with our tenants, our property owners, trying to understand what that sweet spot could be for this potential mandate?
Okay, so at the direction of the committee, we have convened meetings of the RSO working group. Some of the groups that participate include AGLA, the California Apartment Association, the Minority Apartment Owners Association, Betsedic Legal Services, the Coalition for Economic Survival, Inner City Law Center, Inquilinos Unidos, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, LA CAN, and the LA Human Right to Housing Collective. We've had 4 meetings in March, April, and 2 in June. And we've identified issues that are of concern to the group. As you can imagine, the first one is financing and the ability of landlords to obtain the financing. And then right on building on that is then the potential rent burden and ability of tenants to absorb the pass-through. And this is echoed also by the landlord community who fear that if they have to pass through the kinds of amounts that are allowable now, that they might even experience flight of their customers to other places that don't have the pass-through. There's been discussion of the concern about the number of qualified contractors that are available to do this work and the pressure that might result if the city adopts the mandate with a fixed timeline that could result in raising of the price or price gouging. So the group would like to see this done carefully to minimize that. There's been interest and a request that the information be mapped so that we know what parts of the city are impacted and what the even potential impact could be on local economies. There's been agreement and even already action that one way that the group can work together is through unified advocacy at the state level. And I know that even this week, some of our partner groups have sent letters of support to on the Nazarian bill, on the tax credit. So, everyone's in agreement that this is a good way for the city to work together. There's been a suggesting that the city could assist with easing some of the burden of some of the fees, such as planning fees and so on, that, there could be things that the city might do to help with the total costs that would eventually need to be passed through. And just generally, there's concern with the timing of how this is done.
I don't mean to be flippant, but is there consensus on the need for the mandate?
I think yes, that people recognize that it's not a matter of if, but when.
Sure, but I think there's a distinction between having all of those people say, yes, we agree that we need to have a mandate. Has that been reached? Because to me, if we don't have everybody sort of subscribe to the idea that we absolutely need to have a mandate so that we can make sure that we're preserving the lives and safety of Angelenos, it makes it hard for us to sort of figure out what the number is going to be for any of this. So I'm just curious if everybody has agreed that it's necessary.
I think there's an understanding among the group that it's necessary. They haven't adopted that, but I think that they're operating on the premise that it's inevitable and we just have to figure out the best way to do it.
Sure. Okay.
Any other questions? Nope. I forgot the last thing I was going to say, but
sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Let's take an action on 7, which would be adopt the CO report and instruct the CO to submit supplemental documentation needed to add Y-Green and others to the program, along with recommendations on any others who may be interested in participating in PACE. That's the order. Second?
I'd second it.
Second. Okay. Item 8. Yeah, so recommendation for 8 would be instruct HCID report back with options on the new RSO rent adjustments program that takes into account the following variables: cap, amortization period, cost split between landlord and tenant, temporary surcharge or permanent rent increase, interest, phase-in increase. Obviously, that includes duties of landowners. Second is to instruct building and safety to report back on potential number of certified contractors eligible to do seismic work and how many are located in LA County. Third, instruct the CO to come back with a financing options and tools for the new seismic program, specifically working with lenders to explore low-interest loan programs. That's it.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair. Is it the committee's intention to send this item forward to council or to continue it in committee pending those reports?
I think it's we need to hear back more. Right? Oh, no, we're moving this to council.
Okay.
And we will continue to work on this.
So you're approving the motion as
Yes.
amended
Uh-huh.
with those report backs?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. let's continue. We've got another speaker card. Kai Utsumi. Kai, yes, sir. Come on up, sir. Thank you. Almost last word, sir.
Hello. I'm a tenant, Section 8. I'm a human rights activist with LA Can, and I'm opposed to the tenants paying any part of retrofitting for the following reason.
Richard.
They don't, the landlord, through their collective rents, it helps the landlord to pay their mortgages, to pay their property tax, and ultimately their profit. And landlords get all these other tax write-off benefits, with all their expenses. Then the tenants get nothing. There's a lot of tenants, especially poor, hardworking tenants that cannot afford expensive places. Those tenants pay 50, 60, 70% of their income for rent already without paying for retrofitting. And they can't, they have families to support, they have other living expenses, so that I'm totally against the tenants paying any of that retrofitting.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I have one last card, right? So, Antonio Hernandez, please, on final general public comment. 3 o'clock. Let me say, as Antonio works their way up here, I want to applaud everybody who's been participating in the RSO work group, the leadership of bringing all these disparate groups together, and I particularly applaud the advocates for participating and stepping into an area that requires a lot of work for us to reach a resolution. I thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a matter of principle. Being a racist and demanding that the rule of law be enforced are two separate issues. Deport all jealous, uncivilized, nosy racist hate mongers, wetbacks, and Chango Latino gangbangers. No amnesty, no asylum. They actually believe that they are entitled. They actually believe that they are entitled to free American housing, all the while they trash their neighborhoods with feces, urine, trash, destruction of property, and violence, break-ins, criminal mayhem, asco. Stop subsidizing these illegal wetbacks and Chango Latino gangbangers. Let's restore America. Let's first and foremost, again and again, house our military veterans who are today homeless, many committing suicide. And again, these wonderful military veterans need a house. They need a place to sleep. And let's stop the violence out there, please. God bless America and the United States military.
Does that convene our meeting?
No. Should move to adjourn.
That concludes the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes the agenda. This meeting, thank you, everybody, is adjourned. Hi.